Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 114th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Would members please stand? With the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance. Representative Doggett will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Doggett.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, folks, our minister of the day is my good friend, Mr. Rodney Livingston. Dr. Rodney Livingston moved to Tennessee in March of 2008 to work with the Leoma Church of Christ in Lawrence County. He served as the associate minister until 2012, when he became the pulpit minister and continues in that role today. He was born and raised in Northeast Mississippi, where he graduated high school in 2002 with plans to pursue a political science degree. He served as a page in the Mississippi State Senate annually for 4 years of high school and served 1 week as a page his senior year in the Mississippi State House. He was employed by the state of Mississippi in the Office of Bill Status for the 2003 Mississippi legislative session, with desires to become an elected official one day. Oh, but those plans changed at the conclusion of the legislative session, and he spent his career in ministry. So he served 2 churches in Mississippi before moving to Leoma. He traded his political science major for a Bible major and went on to complete 4 degrees in theology, with his last in 2017 with a doctorate of ministry from Ambridge University. He's married to Chastity King Livingston in 2003. They have 3 children, Macy Kate, Callan, who is here with him today up in the gallery, and then Paxton, who is 9 years old. Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to have my good friend, Dr. Rodney Livingston. If you would, lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Representative Doggett. Let's pray together. Our Father in heaven, we are humbled in your presence today. We're thankful that the creator of the universe would give us his ear and would listen intently to our needs, to our wants, to our fears, even to our wishes. Father, today it is an honor to be coming to your throne from this microphone on this floor with all these representatives, with the commission that they have chosen to accept and have been elected to represent. Today, Father, I pray for peace. I pray for unity. I pray for clarity for each one of them as they try to best know how to represent those who have entrusted them with this great responsibility. Father, as a state, as a nation, we stand under your authority, and we're thankful for that ultimately you have the power, you have the control, you have the final say. And for that, we put our faith and our trust in you to know that you understand what is best for all of us. You will guide each of us that allows you to guide us. And that ultimately one day, thanks to the blood of Jesus, we can be brought home to heaven for all eternity. Father, today I pray for this house, for the continuation of this legislative session, for all the laws that will be adopted, and for this great state that we call ourselves citizens of. I pray your blessings upon all of our leaders, not only here, but also nationally as well. Father, help us to be, as we are about to say in this pledge, one nation under you. Guide us, lead us, most of all, forgive us, for we are human and we do fall short. And we're so thankful for our Lord and Savior Jesus. And it's in his name we ask this prayer. Amen.
Representative Doggett would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Dave, you know your TV's not on, right? Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 90 members present.
Please let the journal reflect Representatives Keisling, Camper, Williams, Parkinson, Raper, and Pearson are excused. The next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming, honoring, and announcements.
Welcome, honor, and announcements. Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request the Sergeant at Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please escort the guests to the well. Representative Faison, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 228 by Chairman Faison, a resolution to recognize and honor legendary bassist Victor Wooten, where it is a privilege of the members of this General Assembly to honor those citizens who devotion to craft and artistic integrity not only result in exceptional art, but also inspire people throughout this state and around the world. And whereas one such individual is Victor Wooten, a skilled naturalist, teacher, magician, acrobat, husband, father of four, songwriter, record producer, and one of the most esteemed bass players in the history of the instrument. And whereas he was born into a band with brothers Reggie on guitar, Roy on drums, Rudy on saxophone, and Joseph on keys, all of them happy to welcome the arrival of their baby brother, new bassist, to round out the quintet. He has had an instrument in his hands since the age of 2 and states that he acquired music as one does a language through unfettered access and freedom to experiment. And whereas the Wooten Brothers Band hit the road when Victor was only 6 years old, opening for the iconic Curtis Mayfield, soon after he was affectionately known as the 8-year-old bass ace. And before graduating from high school in Newport News, Virginia, he shared the stage with artists such as Stephanie Mills, War, Ramsey Lewis, Frankie Beverly, and Mace Dexter Wansel, and the Temptations. And whereas now a 5-time Grammy Award winner, Mr. Wooten hit the worldwide scene in 1990 as a founding member of the eclectic supergroup Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. And whereas taking to heart his mother's words, the world needs more than just good musicians, we need good people, Victor Wooten did not content himself with being one of the most celebrated musicians of all time. He has continued to be an example of the sort of person the world needs, one who embodies compassion, humility, and service above self. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 114th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the sitting concurring, that we recognize and honor Victor Wooten for his many contributions to the state of Tennessee through his artistry and generosity of spirit, extending our best wishes for every continued success.
Representative Faison, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I know it's been a long weekend. You're excited to see each other, but can I have your attention, please? So it's not every day that you get the pleasure of listening to an individual who is dubbed as the greatest on the planet. And tonight, you are going to get to hear my friend Victor Wooten, who has been dubbed by lots of musicians and professionals as the greatest bass player to possibly ever live. The other day, we got a chance to meet each other at the airport, and I was just so amazed at how humble and kind he was. And I don't know if you heard in the resolution, but he's had a bass in his hand since he was 2 years old. And one of the most beautiful things about who he is as a person is he's spent his entire adult life giving back to kids. He has camps all year long, all throughout the summer for young aspiring musicians, and he spends an entire week with them. He's also a naturalist, which I love. He takes them on hikes in their breaks. It's just a beautiful thing to see somebody of this caliber, of this talent, come here in the chamber and be a part of what we get to do today. So I selfishly requested him to play one of his greatest pieces, and it's one of my favorite songs, Amazing Grace. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Victor Wooten.
Representative Faison, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, would you come down and take a picture with us? And anybody that's a musician who would love to be in this picture with us, please come on up here.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant at Arms escort our guests into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant Barnes, please escort the guests to the well.
Have them spread out. They come both sides.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, thank you for welcoming back from Murfreesboro the 2024 6A football champion Oakland High School Patriots. I request that the clerk please read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 29 by Chairman Terry and others, a resolution honoring and congratulate the Oakland High School football team, TSSAA Division I Class 6A state champions. Whereas the members of this General Assembly are pleased to especially honor and commend those successful high school teams that through their magnificent exploits bring honor to Tennessee and serve as exceptional ambassadors for this state. And whereas the Oakland High School football team achieved an extraordinary level of success during the 2024 season, winning the coveted Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association Division I Class 6A state football championship. And whereas the Oakland Patriots claimed the title of state champion by defeating Houston High School in a hard-fought battle by a score of 42-20 in the Blue Cross Bowl championship game on December 7th, 2024 at Finley Stadium in Chattanooga. And whereas on their path to championship game, the Patriots defeated Lebanon 41-0, Mount Juliet 35-28, arch rival Riverdale 49-46 and Maryville 21-13 before their final victory over Houston to secure the right to hoist the iconic gold football trophy. And whereas state championships are achieved only through hard work, dedication, and the ability to work together as a team and excel with a cooperative spirit, the Patriots exhibited each of these rare qualities during their championship season. And whereas we find it appropriate to acknowledge and applaud the football players of Oakland High School for serving as exemplars of the high quality of youth in Tennessee, now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives, the 114th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the sitting occurring, that we honor and congratulate the players, coaching staff, team support staff, administrators, cheerleaders, and fans of the Oakland High School football team on winning the 2024 TSSAA Division I Class 6A State Football Championship.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Patriots are a program steeped in tradition and are defined by relentless drive for excellence. They consistently demonstrate a high caliber of play, fostering a culture of teamwork and determination that resonates throughout our community. In 2024, the Oakland Patriots once again proved their dominance by capturing the TSSAA Class 6A State Championship. This is their fourth championship in the past 5 years and their fifth in the past 7. The 2024 state championship further solidified the Oakland Patriots' legacy as a powerhouse program, adding another chapter to their rich history. They're led by Coach Kevin Creasy, who is in the Tennessee Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame. He is the best coach in high school football and helps these young men succeed on and off the field. Mr. Speaker, it'd be an honor if we could recognize Coach Creasy in the well for some comments.
Coach is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to first thank our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for putting us all in this position today, everyone here today. Appreciate that. He helped our entire team through trials and adversity to bring a championship home to Murfreesboro. Our team showed tremendous heart to fight from behind in 8 different games this year, including the state championship. I couldn't be more proud of the coaches and the players for their outstanding hard work and their effort. I couldn't be where I am today without those guys. Thank you, Representative Terry, for the invite. The huge honor to be here today. Appreciate everyone's attention while I'm speaking. That was a big deal too. Finally, I want to give a quick heavenly happy birthday to my dad, Johnny. He loved watching this team. He loved watching it all year long. This year, he had the greatest seat available. He viewed it from up above, and he's watching over us today, and he'd love to tell all y'all congratulations. Appreciate it.
Chairman Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members, for recognizing the hard work for these exceptional football players. And Mr. Speaker, would you join us in the well for a picture?
We are under welcoming, honoring, and announcements. Representative McCalman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, today I have the privilege of having my youngest daughter, Emerson, and my little cousin, Jackson, here serving as pages. So y'all make them feel welcome. In addition, I have my favorite constituent of House District 63, my beautiful bride, Rochelle, as well as my cousin, Morgan, also in my district, and my mother, Reba, who is in Representative Reeves's district. But they are here to see the people's work be done. So if y'all would please make them feel welcome. Thank you.
Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speakers and members. I have a constituent from Williamson County, Miss Michelle Miller. Could y'all make her feel welcome, please?
Representative Mayberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 19 years ago, on March the 4th, 2006, a young lady named Elizabeth Renee Dangeran made me a very happy man and became Mrs. Elizabeth Mayberry. I want to say happy anniversary to her, and I love her.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome Leadership Roane County. They're with us in the gallery today. And I would ask my colleagues if you would stand for just a moment. We have a very special guest in that group. We happen to have the father of badge number 920, Jesse Matthew Rittenhouse, end of watch, September 16, 2004. So I'd like to just give a little honor to the daddy of a hero for just a moment. A moment of silence, Mr. Speaker. Amen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honor of having a young man page for me today, John Campbell. John is the son of Anastasia, who is in the legal department. He's also, I think, shadowing Kevin in your office, Mr. Speaker. And I would just encourage you to not take any haircut advices from him. Thank you.
Representative Martin of Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the 232nd birthday of the 7th governor of the great state of Tennessee, Sam Houston, yesterday. Mr. Houston lived his teenage years at the confluence of the Hiwassee and the Tennessee River on the Hiwassee Island with the Cherokee. He's the only person to ever serve the governor of two states, our great state and our little brother state that we started, the Republic of Texas. But I want to say this, that he's the only man that served also. He also served in two federal offices, from Tennessee as a congressman and from Texas as a senator. But during the war, the Civil War, he was about to be kicked out of office. And this is what he said to those. He's the only Southern governor who would not go with the Confederacy. And he said this: "Office has no charm for me, that it must be purchased at the sacrifice of my conscience and the loss of my self-respect. May it be so today."
Representative Esther Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to welcome some good friends of mine from the city of East Ridge. We have Mayor Brian Williams, Vice Mayor David Tyler, Council Member Jeff Ezel and Andy Witt, and City Manager Scott Miller. Welcome to the Tennessee House of Representatives.
Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, you've heard a lot about the future of nuclear energy from the administration. You've heard about it in the news, but if you'd like to learn a little bit more about it, on Wednesday in the Business and Utility Subcommittee at 3 p.m. in House Hearing Room 1, we're going to have Wes Hines from the University of Tennessee Nuclear Engineering Department. He's going to talk to us a little bit about small modular reactors and just new nuclear in general. I'd like to invite you to come if you can. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speakers. Members, Representative Ashley and I have two great friends of ours that's traveled here from Sevier County to watch us work tonight. If everyone would make welcome, I've got Gary Baker and Logan Baker sitting up there in the gallery. They were there at least earlier, but we want to make them welcome. Thank you so much.
Representative Chisholm at Camper's desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, many of you have probably noticed that the temperature in the building has gotten a little hotter, and there may be a smell of smoke in here because there is a smokestack that's sitting in the building right now. Ladies and gentlemen, my wife, April, is here. Wave your hand, darling.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to point out that the representative over here talked about Sam Houston, forgot the best fact about Sam Houston is that he practiced law on the public square at Lebanon, Tennessee. So I just want to point that out. All the best lawyers come out of Lebanon, Tennessee.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Shaw and I would like to welcome a group from Jackson, Tennessee, Parkview Academy, and Representative Shaw will introduce them. If y'all would stand.
Thank you. We have with us Councilman Johnny Dodd today. Got Mr. Sam Davis and Ms. Sharika Fennessy leading a group of students from Parkview Academy visiting with us today. Y'all help us make them welcome.
Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I have 4 pages from the 71st District here today. Naomi Gutierrez, Mingy Kim, Anderson Roca, and Hamid White. Y'all please make them feel welcome. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Jones of Davison.
Thank you, colleagues. This weekend, Nashville lost one of our civil rights legends, Dr. Charles Kimbrough, who was born on June 24th, 1927 in Prospect, Tennessee in Giles County, and passed away on March 1st. Dr. Kimbrough was a veteran of the Korean War, a Purple Heart Medal Combat Award and Bronze Star recipient, as well as the first African-American licensed veterinarian in the state of Tennessee. He was also president of the Nashville NAACP when the cross was burned in the front of their office on Jefferson Street. And so Dr. Kimbrough talked to his wife this weekend. Just want to have a moment of silence to honor Dr. Kimbrough, one of our great Tennesseans and a great hero of our state. So just have a moment of silence for him. Thank you.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to ask if Representative Chisholm will also be present with this. Tomorrow is a great, wonderful day. Jesse Chisholm has a birthday, but he shares it with the lovely Leah Love. And so they'll both be celebrating birthdays. Happy birthday to you and my wife, Jesse.
Anyone else seeking recognition? Seeing none, next order, Ms. Clark.
Introduction to resolutions.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Ms. Clark.
City Joint Resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory memorializing and items be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Ms. Clark.
Resolutions lying over.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Ms. Clark.
Introduction of bills, Senate bills on first consideration.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate bills 109, 794, 797 transmitted by the Senate be held at the desk in third consideration of the companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Ms. Clark.
Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House bills 1,414 through 1,417 be passed on second consideration be held at the desk and referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Ms. Clark.
Petitions and memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on the third and final consideration according to Rule 50.
Chair Lady moves passage of the consent calendar, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, item 5, House Joint Resolution 173 has been objected to by Chairman Clemens. Item 6, House Joint Resolution 174 has been objected to by Chairman Clemens. Item 7, House Joint Resolution 185 has been objected to by Chairman Clemens. Number 15, House Bill 111 has been objected to by Leader Lamberth. Item 25, House Bill 901 has been objected to by Chairman Clemens. And finally, Mr. Speaker, item 68, House Joint Resolution 296 has been objected to by Leader Lamberth.
All right, anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that all Shelby County delegation members voting in the affirmative on House Joint Resolution 262 be listed as first prime co-sponsors.
Without objections, disclosure is duly noted. Anyone else seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we're voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Vote aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
Having received a constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. The motion reconsidered is tabled. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
First bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 177 by Chairman Powers, a resolution to urge the naming of the Blue Spring Boat Ramp and Speedwell in honor of U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Terry Williams Prater.
Representative Powers, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of HJR 177.
Representative Powers moves adoption. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Powers, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HJR 177 is a request to name the Blue Springs Boat Ramp and Speedwell in honor of U.S. Army Staff Terry William Prater. Sergeant Prater made the ultimate sacrifice for our country when he was killed in Iraq. My notes. When he was killed in Iraq in March of 15th, 2007, at the age of 25. Sergeant Prater died along with 4 other soldiers when their vehicle struck an IED. He lived in Claiborne County, and this boat ramp was where he always put in his boat to enjoy what he loved the most, fishing. Still today, Sergeant Prater's son, Bryson, still launches his boat and fishes from the Blue Springs boat ramp that his father loved so well and called it his favorite fishing hole. Sergeant Prater was awarded the Purple Heart and the Silver Star from the President in 2004. He was on his second tour of duty in Iraq when he was killed. This would be a great honor for him and his family to name this boat ramp after where a flotilla of boats were launched to scatter his remains on Norris Lake. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Powers renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 177 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
House Joint Resolution 177 having received constitutional majority, I declare adopted without objection. The motion reconsidered is tabled. Let journal reflect. Representative Lynn is excused. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 128 by Chairman Boyd and others relative to workers' compensation.
Representative Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 128 on third and final consideration.
Representative Boyd moves passage. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a bill that was brought to us by the Bureau of Workers' Comp. It makes a few changes, one of which is it removes the sunset for the Next Step program. It extends the sunset for the attorney's fee program where attorney's fees can be awarded to the plaintiff's attorney in the event of a denial by employer or insurance company that's considered unreasonable or egregious. It also increases the age by which a person can become a workers' compensation judge and allows them to serve an extra term where they now can serve 3, they will be able to serve 4. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Boyd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Hardaway, you're recognized.
Thank you. And to the Speaker, just registering my objection, the only reason that I'm voting no on your bill is the age limit that was put in place. Other than that, I support it. Thank you.
Representative Boyd? Nope.
Nothing, Mr.
All
Speaker.
right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 128, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 78, 11 ayes, one present, not voting.
House Bill 128 having received a constitutional majority, hereby declare passed without objection. Most Reeks are tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 817 by Representative Garrett relative to trusts.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 817 on third and final consideration.
Representative Garrett moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. We're going to move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for what I'm sure will be a very thorough and detailed explanation. Thank you.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of committee amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 817 is the 7th time I've presented on behalf of the Tennessee Bankers Association updates to our trust legislation. Each year I tell you how many more assets have come into the state of Tennessee under trust. And I'm proud to say it's gone, since I've started this, from $25 billion to $300 billion under management. And it's due to your ability to keep our trust laws in place. So real quickly, what this does, it really clarifies, it's the shortest piece of legislation that I've had since I've carried this piece of legislation for the Bankers Association. It updates when a public trustee can be appointed. It also updates our code regarding electronic records. It also clarifies who can accept notice on behalf of a trust. It also clarifies who can be reimbursed for certain reimbursable expenses. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to take any questions. Otherwise, I'll renew my motion.
Representative Garrett renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 817 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Leatherwood, aye. Alexander, aye. Rudd, aye. Cochran, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91 nay.
House Bill 817 having received a constitutional majority, hereby declare passed without objection. Most Reeks are tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 932 by Representative Alexander and others relative to communication devices at schools.
Representative Alexander, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the passage of House Bill 932 on the third and final consideration.
Representative Alexander moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Education Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman White, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt and I defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Chairman White moves adoption of committee amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Alexander, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill just eliminates the use of cell phone or any wireless communication device during instructional time during our schools so our kids can learn better. It will allow all the districts to put into place their own policy that is usable in their district and in their school. There are plenty of allowances for the bill that will take any concerns that anyone has concerning a disability or a medical need or anything like that. I renew my motion.
Representative Alexander renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Himmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to thank the sponsor for her tireless work on this this piece of legislation. As a parent As someone who has spoken with teachers and counselors in my community who have seen the benefit of our county having a policy like this and what it's done to improve the educational outcomes and just general welfare of students' mental health. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Let journal reflect. Representative McKenzie is excused. Representative Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And sponsor, I thank you for your work on this. And you and I have had numerous conversations about this over the past few weeks, but just want clarification. I've got many students that have disabilities that utilize electronic devices on a daily basis. They're using these for communication because maybe they're nonverbal. And so we want to make sure that when this goes into effect, that even though maybe those IEP or 504 meetings that they have, they may be delayed when the school year starts. We don't want to take these devices away from these students. So just making sure that with the language in this bill that they're going to be fine to continue to operate. Is that correct?
Representative Alexander.
That is correct.
Representative Doggett.
Thank you so much.
Representative Renaud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have heard from many folks on both sides of this issue, both parents, teachers, and administrators alike. In my district, we have learned of issues that were potentially not would have been brought to our attention if a student didn't have a cell phone. But I do support this decision on a policy for cell phones at the school board level, keeping it as local as possible to the people. I do hope that schools will be reasonable to work with parents and to understand what the specific issues are in their district. But I just wanted to say that I do support that, and I'm thankful that this decision is being kept as locally as possible. Thank you.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify a piece too. I think I saw in your bill that if a teacher wanted to use the cell phone for instruction, they could do that as well, correct?
Representative Alexander.
That is correct, as long as their school district allows it.
Representative Johnson.
Okay. I'm unaware of a school system that doesn't already have a policy. Most of them, or all of them, to my knowledge, everyone I called already has a policy and has had a policy for years. Did you find that there was some school system that didn't have a policy?
Representative Alexander.
The superintendent's asked me to put this in place so that it would become a law.
Representative Johnson.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I got my answer. Understand each school will do their own policies.
Representative Alexander.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you for the.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I share the concerns of several of my colleagues with regards to the discretion of the LEA. So this bill is mandatory. It requires the LEAs to put a policy in place and outlines several things that they must have in their policy. So for the purposes of the record, can you tell us what types of discretion the LEA actually has under this piece of legislation?
Representative Alexander.
They have the choice whether or not they want it to be just during instructional time, if they want it to be for the whole school day. They have a choice of what to do with those cell phones when a student enters the building with them. They have a choice of their policy as far as disciplinary measures. All those, how they want to implement this policy is totally up to them. We're just asking each LEA and each school board district to have a policy in place that cell phones would not be allowed during instructional time.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So they're not allowed during instructional time, but there are exceptions if they need to use these for during instructional time, as my colleague asked, whether they're part of a presentation during instructional time. If there's some sort of a learning aid or app on there, they're allowed during instructional time and so forth. And the LEAs have this discretion. Is that
Representative Alexander.
That is correct. They have that flexibility. Yes.
Chairman Clemens.
And then the most important concern is during emergencies, just for the purpose of the record, that if there is an emergency at a school, the students will have access to those communications devices in those instances.
Representative Alexander.
We ask the school boards to put in place a policy to communicate to parents during an emergency situation. The last thing we need is for students to be able to have their cell phones where they're calling in on 911 and causing a backup and not being able to get through to the emergency personnel that they need to reach. So the school boards put into place a policy for emergency situations that they communicate those emergency situations directly to the parents themselves.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so just to clarify, when there is a lockdown at my child's school or there's some other instance of that nature, you're telling me that if I text my child or that he can't respond or if he can't text me to let me know that he's okay and in a safe place, that only the school system can do that? Or will I not be able to have that direct communication with my child or he with me?
Representative Alexander.
Each school district can decide how they want to handle that. That'll be totally up to the LEAs and the school districts.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, sponsor.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. Good afternoon to the sponsor. And I want to thank you for the bill because it brings up the focus and discussion back to science, medical science, and the effect of this steady 24-hour addiction to cell phones and all of the apps and the internet's information and different games and programs and people that you can connect with. The science says that it causes the brain to develop differently, and that's a problem. I think that the ability for our children to grow up, for lack of a more technical term, naturally, this puts that into the discussion where it needs to be in the schoolhouse because it affects both their academic performance and their socialization skills. So I thank you for that, and I appreciate the fact that it's still some discretion that's available to the LEAs. Thank you, ma'am.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the sponsor, so I'm looking at the legislation and section 2 where it says a discipline policy or code of conduct adopted by a local board of education or public charter school governing body may authorize a teacher to withhold a student's wireless communication device from the student for the duration of the instruction time if the student is non-compliant. The school district is not required to have this policy, but they can choose to have a policy, correct?
Representative Alexander.
They are required to have a disciplinary policy, whatever policy they choose for it to be.
Representative Love.
Okay, so again, they're not required to have in their policy though that it says that they're going to withhold.
Representative Alexander.
That is correct, sir.
Representative Love.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the bill, Representative. You and I have worked on this for some time, and I'm glad to be a co-sponsor. I've had numerous conversations for several months with my LEAs in all 3 counties that I represent. Some of the district directors even had focus groups on this subject. Focus groups with parents, focus groups with principals, focus groups with teachers. Overwhelming response was in support of doing something to help the LEAs so that we would have their back. It's true, they can develop their own policy, but even though there's overwhelming support, there are some, as we know, who always criticize anything. But we need to have their back. Our teachers work in a very difficult environment sometimes, and we need to get their back. And so this is a good bill. There's all kinds of information and data worldwide on the negative impact that cell phones have on learning. And this is a good bill. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor, and I urge my colleagues to vote for it. Thank you.
Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, who reviews the policy once a school district passes a policy about this?
Representative Alexander.
That policy would go to the Board of Education, sir.
Representative Gant.
Okay, and what are there specific standards that have to be in this policy?
Representative Alexander.
Meaning what's different than this bill, or what's in the bill, or you just want me to tell you what was in the bill as far as the standards?
Representative Gant.
Are there specific mandates, I guess, that the local LEA has to pass in their new cell phone policy?
Representative Alexander.
The only mandates there are, sir, is that they put a policy in place that establishes that no cell phones or any device that transmits and sends data, whether it be a laptop, a computer, anything, a watch, during instructional time, then they are to write that policy along with a policy that also puts into place exceptions for people with disabilities, for example, or medical needs. They also have to have in that policy the ability for them to communicate, a policy that they will communicate to families during emergency times. And also, I've covered the disability one. Just making sure I've covered it all. I think that's it. Oh, and then the disciplinary conduct, code of conduct that they would have with the policy. All that has to be done, and they submit it to the Tennessee Board of Education.
Representative Gant.
And what happens if that local LEA completely ignores this?
Representative Alexander.
I would hope they would not do that, since it's going to be a law.
Representative Gant.
Well, that's part of what we're trying to get at, is we're trying to identify the problem. So, and of course, disciplinary reasons are part of why a lot of school districts have trouble dealing with this, is they don't know how to, there's a lot of disciplinary issues that go along with that. So if they ignore this, how are we progressing to a point to where this is being effective?
Representative Alexander.
I think with everything that's been in the news and everything that we have learned about the harm that cell phones are doing, the amount of time it takes for a student to refocus after they have had a message show up on their cell phone, all the information that we have been given in the past year has led us to the assumption that every school district should want to do this type of policy if they want what's best for their students and they want them to be able to focus and learn.
Representative Gant.
Okay, and I totally agree with what the legislation is trying to do, but there is no recourse that the Department of Education, as far as this, that's in this language, that's going to affect that school district if they do not pass some kind of policy.
Representative Alexander.
It would be no different than any other policy that they would break in law, that they would have to answer to the Board of Education on, and I'm not sure what the recourse would be for that.
Representative Gant.
Thank you.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 932 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Elton Haynes, aye. Rudd, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 80, nays, one present, not voting.
House Bill 932 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection to the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1096 by Representative Vaughn and others relative to community benefit agreements.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1096 on its third and final consideration.
Chairman Vaughn moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Bricken, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites the bill. Move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for a further explanation.
Vice Chairman Bricken moves adoption of Committee Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has House Amendments 2, 3, and 4 by Representative Bain. Mr. Speaker, after conferring with Council, Amendments 2, 3, and 4 have been deemed to be outside the scope of the capture.
2, 3, and 4 amendments are out of order. Call up next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, today I present to you House Bill 1096. House Bill 1096 deals with a new tactic or new operation that we're seeing whenever economic development projects are being presented to local communities. What's happening is that normally ECD reviews a project, determines that it's good enough, and the local's responsibility is to make sure that it complies with local zoning ordinances, enters into a development agreement with it, and makes sure that it follows codes and has inspections as it's being constructed. Yet, in the recent years, we've seen a different level of approval, which is more of a quasi-approval that's being forced upon people. And this community benefits agreement is an instrument that contractually binds the employer to fund or provide specific attributes, service or amenities, mitigations, or anything of value to a community, or here's the other part, a non-governmental organization. It establishes can establish employment criteria of any type, including wage and hour criteria. And it can also provide or require an employer to utilize a trade union or other unionized workforces where the employees collectively bargain with employers for wages, hours, or working conditions. What this bill seeks to do is to say if an employer or a project has been approved for economic incentives by the state of Tennessee, then they can no longer enter into a community benefits agreement. It's not that they can't do any of those things voluntarily. They can. What this does is this removes the compelling nature of a contract, forcing these people to accept this as a condition of getting their project approved and getting shovels in the ground. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll stand for any questions.
Chairman Vaughn renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Bain, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to first say thank you to Legal Services, who always keeps me humble. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I have major issues with this bill. Last year, we passed a bill to, in order for a company to be eligible for a tax incentive from TNECD, that they had to fight their employees if their employees wanted to unionize. So if you chose to be a good employer who respects your employees, you lost your incentives. Last year, a majority of this body said we stand with bosses, not with workers, and we will make sure that taxpayer money in this state is not only helping bosses, but also those who don't respect their workers. Now, this bill expands this mindset. This bill says that if you choose to listen to people who live in your district, so these companies are not being forced to engage in these types of relationships, it's a community coming together saying, hey, we want you to be a good employer, we want a reciprocal relationship with you in this community. So now we are saying that if a company doesn't want to be a good neighbor, if it doesn't want to engage in good behavior with community members, that they lose their tax incentives. So my amendments were going to be one that if a company committed, was responsible for a worker's death within a set period of time, that they would lose their incentives. Unfortunately, as legal services told me that was out of the scope. But I think it's important to note that we have communities across Tennessee that want to be engaged with the companies that are coming to their communities. They want that relationship to be mutually beneficial and reciprocated. And this bill de-incentivizes, and not only that, but it punishes companies who want to be acting in good faith and good neighbors and good stewards in their communities. So I hope my colleagues will stand with me and vote against this bill. Thank you.
Chairman Vaughn, anything?
Well, just one thing, Mr. Speaker. Again, this does not prevent someone from providing any of those benefits. If they want to do that, that's fine. What this does is keeps them out of the compelling nature of a contract, because my question would be is, what does that employer receive in exchange for them binding into an agreement? They can voluntarily do all of this, but it's the contract that's being compelled by a binding agreement that's the problem. And so I understand my colleagues' different perspective on this, and I just wanted to point those things out.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've heard from a number of business folks across the state, especially NFIB members, that are in support of this legislation. They think it's important that businesses never feel pressured into these agreements involuntarily. They certainly, as the sponsors already stated, can do this voluntarily. These agreements with local governments or non-governmental organizations can impose costs and requirements on the business that can include agreeing to employ a unionized workforce for some or all jobs on a project, specific investments in the community, and other conditions. Many businesses decide to invest in their communities regardless of whether they have a legal agreement to do so. They sponsor Little League teams, they invest in parks and community centers, they work with local charities. This bill would not prevent those voluntary investments, and I appreciate the sponsor bringing this.
Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1096 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Let the journal reflect. Representative Hastings excused. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 72, 18 nays.
House Bill 1096, having received the constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1136 by Chairman Boyd and others relative to broadband enabled services.
Chairman Boyd, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1136 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Boyd moves passage, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites the bill. We're going to move to adopt, and then we're going to defer to the sponsor for a really brief explanation.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption. Committee Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Committee Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, broadband is something that has always been regulated by the FCC at the federal level. Over the last few years, going all the way back to 2002, it has bounced back several times from Title I to Title II, Title I being information services, Title II being telecommunications. It keeps getting bounced back and forth. And one of the unintended consequences is that if it were considered telecommunications, it could imply that the Tennessee Public Utility Commission would need to regulate them. So what this bill does is it simply clarifies that no matter where this lands at the federal level, we expect the FCC to regulate it, not the state of Tennessee. And it also eliminates an obsolete reporting requirement that TPUC has been providing. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Boyd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my concern here is we often say that Tennessee knows what's best for Tennessee, and here we're relying on the federal government to some extent. And right now, the federal government's in flux. We don't know if these departments are going to exist or not. Then we don't know if they're going to be staffed or not. So if there is a vacuum of leadership or direction at the federal government's level with regard to these issues, what are we to do at that point?
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it has always been under the FCC. We've never regulated it. If something were to happen between the passing of this bill and next year, we would just have to sort of get by, and then next year someone could file a bill to move regulation. We can certainly undo what we're doing, but the intent is that we don't regulate it at the state level.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I mean, I understand that the TPUC doesn't want to deal with this and we want to take it out of their hands. And I generally agree with the spirit of the legislation. I just have sincere concerns about the instability of the level of the government above us right now with regards to be able to do that. And I'm afraid that if there is a gap in regulation or a gap in facilitation of the business industry, this is such an important sector that there would be a gap there. At any given time from administration to administration, I mean, if you look at the regulation of net neutrality, it changes from administration to administration, perhaps based on who's on any commission at any given time. So again, my concern is we always say Tennessee knows what's best for Tennessee. Yet in this circumstance, we're saying we're just going to ride the waves with whatever is going on in Washington and let that dictate to us what our communications sector looks like. So that's my concerns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks, sponsor.
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to clarify, TPUC is not regulating it now, and it's because of the waves that you described is the reason that this bill is necessary. Because it continues to go back and forth between Title I and Title II, we're basically saying no matter where it lands, we are not regulating it at the state level. It is a federal issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For those of you who don't know, I got my start rural broadband organizing in the state of Tennessee when I moved back. And this is an issue near and dear to my heart as someone who's been trying to bring internet to the Clear Fork Valley to about 600 houses. Representative Boyd, I just had a few questions. My understanding of the bill is that this would strip local and state governments of their ability to regulate broadband policies. Is that true?
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This would clarify that our Public Utility Commission, who does not regulate it now, will not regulate it. Because when it does land, as Chairman Clemens mentioned, sometimes it does fall under telecommunications. Telecommunications depend on who is in power in Washington. It could create some confusion and ambiguity about does the state have that authority? And so we're simply saying that it has been regulated well by the FCC. We trust that. We think that's where broadband belongs. And so we're just putting that into law. Now, we're not tying our hands so that we couldn't come back in the future and do something if we needed to. But at this time, once this bill passes and gets signed into law, then until we come back into session next year, then it would not be regulated at the state level.
Representative Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, and does this bill block consumer protections that would ensure fair pricing, reliable services, and accountability for internet providers?
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, it doesn't do that. That would be something that since the federal government has jurisdiction over this, that would be something that would be handled at the federal level.
Representative Bain.
Okay. Well, for those of you who haven't dealt with broadband democracy or accountability, this body regulated the inability for internet service providers to build outside their footprint, like the Chattanooga EPB. For me, it is incredibly important that we allow our public utilities to meet the demands of broadband, of their constituents, of the people that they provide service to. And I do think that this bill, despite it being coded with, the federal government will take care of it. I do think that big telecom wins in this bill and Tennessee families will lose. So thank you.
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I wanted to read this into the record just to make sure. I wanted to be clear on the record for legislative history purposes that the entities defined in Tennessee Code annotated 65-4-101 subsection 7A may also provide broadband internet access services, but providing such services does not make them telecommunications service providers under Tennessee law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Martin of Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1136 has been to vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, has any member change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 71, 18 nays.
House Bill 1136, having received a constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. The motion reads serious table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 175 by Representative Cochran and others, a resolution relative to free speech and civil discourse on Tennessee University's college campuses.
Leader Cochran, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of HJR 175.
Leader Cochran moves adoption. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, HJR 175 urges all universities in the state to continue to commit to providing a campus environment that promotes institutional neutrality, free speech, and civil discourse. Some universities within the state have already placed these free speech principles into their bylaws, and this resolution just simply urges other universities to follow suit. With that, I renew my motion. Thank you.
Leader Cochran renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative McCalman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 175, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 72, 13 nays, 3 present, not voting.
House Joint Resolution 175, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare adopted without objection. The motion reads serious table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill 114 by Representative Ashley and others, relative to debt reporting requirements. Mr. Speaker, was previously considered and reset for today's regular calendar.
Representative Ashley, you're recognized.
I'm your co-sponsor and I'm here to help.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires all local government to report defaults, covenant violations, and credit rating reductions to the Comptroller's Office. And I move passage.
Representative Ashley renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting very slowly. All those in favor of Senate Bill 114, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 86, 2 nays.
Senate Bill 114, having received a constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. Motion reads serious table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next order.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After consulting with the Assistant Minority Leader, I move that HJR 163 be heard in the State and local committee this week.
For the motion, any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of our freshmen pulled a fast one and got one passed on the consent calendar, her first bill. And with that in mind, I move to lift from the table the motion to reconsider action on Senate Bill 109.
Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to reconsider action on Senate Bill 109.
Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to place Senate Bill 109 on Thursday's regular calendar. And members, I would encourage you to remember that she tried to pull a fast one.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk. Oh, Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to refer HJR 296 to Criminal Justice Subcommittee.
For the motion, any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Scheduling and procedural announcements.
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the final calendar for Cities and Counties Subcommittee will be heard on March 19th. The deadline to put bills on notice will be March 12th. So the final calendar for Cities and Counties, March 19th. Education Instruction Subcommittee final calendar, March 11th. The deadline to put bills on notice for that final calendar is this Wednesday, the 5th. That's Education Instruction. And a reminder, House Departments and Agencies Subcommittee will set its special alcohol calendar to be heard on Tuesday, March 11th. The deadline for alcohol-related bills will be 3:30 next Wednesday, March 5th. That's this Wednesday. The Liquor by the Drink Omnibus Bill will be heard on March 11th. The deadline for that bill will be 10 a.m. on Monday, March 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next order.
Well, roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 88 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
I can release the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 9 a.m. on Thursday, March 6, 2025.
Without objection, the House stands in recess till 9 a.m. on Thursday, March 6, 2025.